wandering beyond Jerusalem's ancient walls, exploring sites connected to Jesus' final moments before the crucifixion. A peaceful garden and a stone closely tied to powerful prayers once whispered. Meeting fellow Cavabaeans, whose warmth and sisterly care guided us, we set out together to explore more of Jerusalem's most awe-inspiring landmarks. To better understand the Mount of Olives' importance, we look at an ancient view of Jerusalem and a current map, where it now holds landmarks key to Jesus' life. Exiting the tomb of Virgin Mary Church, we then took the narrow passageway to the right leading to the Grotto of Gethsemane. As we entered, we came across a group of tourists heading out. 3 key events are linked to this cave. It may have been the site of Jesus' nighttime meeting with Nicodemus. It's believed to be where Jesus was betrayed by Judas and arrested, and it's where the disciples sought shelter and fell asleep while Jesus prayed. The link between the Gethsemane Cave and Jesus and his disciples comes from Christian tradition and biblical accounts. This connection is depicted on the altar. 2 bronze figures beneath the main altar depict Jesus' disciples sleeping. Above the main altar is a representation of Jesus praying among the apostles, while the paintings over the side altars depict the Assumption of the Virgin and the kiss of Judas. The Gospel of Luke mentions Jesus went to a place called Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives to pray, and his disciples, despite his request to stay awake, fell asleep. The same event is also described in Matthew and Mark. To the right of the altar is a hole in the wall where a wooden beam was placed to press and crush olives in baskets. The natural grotto remains largely unchanged since the time of Jesus. In ancient times, many olives grew in the area, and the cave was known as the Cave of the Olive Press. Just as olives are crushed to release their precious oil, Jesus endured the weight of suffering during his earthly life to bring forth salvation and hope for humanity. After visiting the Gethsemane Cave, located north of the Garden of Gethsemane, we made our way back to the main road to continue on to the Church of All Nations. The church is located adjacent to the Garden of Gethsemane. Standing before the Church of All Nations, we see its design seamlessly blending the grandeur of a Roman basilica. The richly colored triangular mosaic above the entrance adds to the church's striking, spiritual beauty. Because the wide gate was closed, we returned to this intersection, which leads to the entrance of the Garden of Gethsemane. We were greeted by the peaceful Garden of Gethsemane, well known to the disciples for its proximity to the route leading to Bethany. Bethany, home to Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, is where Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead and stayed during his final days before his ascension. Gethsemane, derived from the Aramaic Gethsemane, meaning all press, refers to the olive press once used in the garden, emphasizing its agricultural significance. Today, Gethsemane comprises 4 significant pilgrimage sites: the Church of the Assumption, the Gethsemane Cave which we just visited, the Gethsemane Garden where we currently are, and the Church of All Nations, which we will visit next, each honoring its sacred history. Before the construction of these religious structures, Gethsemane was a quiet olive grove at the foot of the Mount of Olives, mentioned in the New Testament as the sacred place where Jesus prayed with his disciples on the night before his crucifixion. The Church of All Nations now stands over the revered rock where Jesus is believed to have prayed in deep agony before being betrayed by Judas Iscariot and arrested. Standing outside the Church of All Nations, we feel the warmth of the sun shining brightly from behind us, casting a golden glow over the scene. The majestic church stands before us, its grand facade bathed in light, creating a serene and ethereal atmosphere. The sun's rays filter through the surrounding, enhancing the peaceful ambience. We take in the beauty and history of the moment. Perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, though we hope it's not the last. The Church of All Nations got its name because many countries helped fund its construction. National symbols of the 12 donors can be found in the ceiling. Some countries also contributed to the artwork and decorations inside. The Church of All Nations, also known as the Basilica of the Agony, was completed in 1924 and is the third church built on the site. Removing my hat is required as a gesture of respect. The church has a solemn, peaceful feeling, created by dim lighting and soft natural light coming through special windows. The architect, Antonio Barluzzi, evoked the nighttime of the agony by leaving the interior in semi-darkness. The somber blue of a star-studded night sky and the ceiling domes is being surrounded by olive branches reminiscent of the Gethsemane garden. The church has mosaics showing important moments: Judas betraying Jesus with a kiss, Jesus praying with an angel's comfort, and his arrest. As mentioned when we were at the Gethsemane Cave, several Gospels recount that after the Last Supper, Jesus went to the Mount of Olives with his disciples. He left 8 behind and took Peter, James, and John further with him, asking them to stay awake as he prayed. In his anguish, Jesus threw himself on the ground, and his sweat became like drops of blood. However, the disciples, overwhelmed with grief, fell asleep. Soon after, a group led by Judas arrived to arrest Jesus, with Judas betraying him with a kiss. We embraced the opportunity to lay our hands on the flat outcrop of rock in front of the high altar, traditionally believed to be part of the original Mount of Olives. According to a long-standing Christian tradition, it is identified as the Rock of Agony. Archaeological evidence confirms that Jesus walked throughout Jerusalem, with biblical accounts often describing his time spent praying on the Mount of Olives. This suggests that he may have stood in numerous places across the city. As we walk through Jerusalem, it's humbling to think that we might be standing where he once stood, especially at a place where he prayed. As the sun's rays illuminate the tall, graceful columns framing the church entrance, the stone seems to glow softly, as if touched by the breath of the divine. As we walk through the other half of the garden, its serene beauty evokes a profound sense of reflection. Though the vibrant flower beds and carefully maintained paths add a touch of modernity to the scene, we can't help but wonder, are these ancient, gnarled trees silent witnesses to the agony of Jesus on the night before his crucifixion? At the end of this section lies the original rock bed at the foot of the Mount of Olives, featuring a depiction of Jesus praying in agony. It is also possible that this is the very spot where Jesus prayed before he was crucified, with the gnarled olive tree standing as the only silent witnesses. Israel is home to many ancient olive trees, with some in Araba and Deir Hanna estimated to be over 3,000 years old. However, the current Gethsemane trees are not from the time of Christ, as Roman historian Flavius Josephus reports that all trees around Jerusalem were cut down during the Roman siege in AD 70. Research in 2012 revealed that 3 of the 8 trees date back to the 12th century, and all originated from a single parent tree. Some Gethsemane olives may be descendants of those that existed in Christ's time, as new shoots can grow from olive tree roots. In 1982, radiocarbon dating tests confirmed that some root material from the trees could be dated to 2,300 years old. The fruit from the Gethsemane olive trees is harvested annually, with the all used for sanctuary lamps, and the pits made into rosary beads, which are given to notable pilgrims by the Franciscan Custos of the Holy Land. We typically don't feature others for privacy, but we often meet fellow travelers united by a passion for discovery and a shared love of preserving history. The Garden of Gethsemane, preserved through time, remains a poignant symbol of Jesus' agony, where history and faith intertwine. Upon leaving the garden, we turned right, making our way toward the western slope of the Mount of Olives. This path took us above the Garden of Gethsemane and the Church of All Nations, leading to the Church of Mary Magdalene, one of the few individuals named in the Gospels who witnessed Christ's crucifixion and the first to bear witness to his resurrection. Along this path, a new generation of olive trees has taken root, standing as a testament to renewal and continuity. Before proceeding further, we decided to skip the Golden Dome Church and prioritize reaching the top of the Mount of Olives. Good thing we hadn't gone far when we realized we missed the street we needed to take. It seems our change of plans was meant to happen so we could meet a Tay Mavik and a Tay Liesel, OFW in Israel, who were taking a break from their walk. They heard us speaking in our language and approached us. Together we made our way to Dominus Flevit Church, Latin for the Lord wept, that marks the spot where, according to tradition, Jesus wept over the city of Jerusalem, foretelling its destruction. The view from the church complex is one of the best spots for a panoramic view of Jerusalem. It makes it easy to imagine the scene as Christ looked down on the city, weeping as he prophesied its destruction, warning that enemies would crush the city because it failed to recognize his visit. His prophecy was fulfilled in AD 70 when Roman legions besieged Jerusalem, burned the temple, and leveled the city. Though we couldn't enter the teardrop-shaped church, we were grateful to explore the complex and be near it. We continue along the triumphal entry path. Jesus traveled on a donkey from the Mount of Olives, where crowds celebrated his arrival as the Messiah with palm branches and garments. After a 4 minutes walk, we arrived at the tomb of the prophets. Rather than visiting immediately, we asked the landowner if we could return later, as we were eager to reach the peak of the Mount of Olives without delay. Graciously, he agreed. So later, we'll go down into this cave underground, wondering what's in store for us down there. We continued walking and chatting, learning a Tay Marvik works in Haifa and a Tay Liesel is based in Jerusalem. Their warm and welcoming personalities instantly put us at ease, making us feel like we had older siblings looking after us, as they are based in Israel while we were just visitors. When we reached the panoramic views at 7 Arches Street, we encountered an elderly man who kindly offered us a ride to the peak of Mount Olives, without asking for anything in return. He knows that the visiting hours at the place we wanted to see were quickly approaching, and walking there would likely make it impossible for us to arrive on time. As guests in his country, it was his way of welcoming us and ensuring we had a memorable time in his holy homeland. As the vehicle gently ascended the slopes of the Mount of Olives, the tower at the entrance of our destination came into view. Yes, we all wanted to visit the Dome of the Ascension when we bumped into each other earlier along the triumphal entry path. The small octagonal structure is traditionally believed to be the spot where Jesus ascended into heaven. Although the ascension of Jesus is commemorated at 3 other sites on the Mount of Olives: the Russian Orthodox Church of the Ascension, the Carmelite Monastery, and the Church of the Paternoster. The Dome of the Ascension is often considered the actual site. It has been venerated for centuries, is marked by a rock slab believed to bear his footprint, and holds significant historical and religious importance. The elderly gentleman dropped us right in front of the Dome of the Rock entrance. We expressed our appreciation and bid him goodbye. Sadly, by the time we got there, it had already closed. Another group had arrived before us, but they were in the same situation. The gate was already locked. We were advised to check with the shopkeeper on the opposite corner to ask if the person holding the key had left it at the store, which he does sometimes. The storekeeper called the key holder. He hadn't left the key and couldn't come back. We can't help but feel a bit of sadness, especially not knowing when, or if ever, we'll have the chance to return to Jerusalem. Though we couldn't enter the dome, we're incredibly blessed for the chance to be here, which, as we've mentioned several times, may have been where Jesus once stood. Just as we had planned earlier, we made our way back to the tomb of the prophet. Though it was already past visiting hours, the kind elderly gentleman overseeing the cave graciously allowed us to visit. The path leading to the tomb was a bit steep, with stone steps that seemed to take us back in time. The property is owned by the Russian Orthodox Church but is overseen by a local Arab who lives on top of the tomb. Once we were inside, we were all filled with joy. This is the first site we've entered together as a group. Prophets in the Bible were chosen by God to deliver his messages and predict the future, often facing rejection and hardship. They came from diverse backgrounds and used various methods to communicate God's truth. We were instructed to light candles, which would serve as additional source of light. The soft glow of the candles added to the spiritual atmosphere of the place. Ate Marvik focusing on the layout of the tomb. Standing at the rotunda, Mr. Jamiel will explain the cave's significance.
Now, this is the drawing of the cave. The cave called Tombs of the Prophets. The prophets are the last three Jewish prophets from the Second Temple period: Haggai, Malachi, and Zechariah. So, we come down the steps. We are here. Two circles in the cave. The first circle contains the tombs around. The second circle, a corridor to pray, no tombs. In the cave altogether, 50 graves. The last three prophets and their followers. Now, both Haggai and Malachi buried in the center, in the room opposite us there. The half circle, that side, is the followers of Haggai and Malachi. And the other half, Zechariah, his followers. Because Zechariah buried with his followers, the grave cut square, the followers cut round. In the grave, many papers, this is prayers. People come to pray like the Western Wall, they leave messages. And while they are walking, I'll put a little candle in the tomb of Zechariah so you don't miss it. Now, why these prophets buried on Mount of Olives? It's connected with the prophecy of Zechariah chapter 14, which says the Messiah will come from heavens to Mount of Olives and will be the resurrection to the Temple Mount. That's why they are buried here. That's why the Jews use the whole Mount of Olives cemetery, all waiting for the Messiah to come. Now, all around on the walls, we can see the chisel marks because the whole cave cut by hand. This is not natural. And they start from the hole there. This is the first entrance. They come down, digging this round circle, like digging a cistern of water. That's the easiest way. Then they need light, space to take the rocks out. They open the main entrance. And then they continue digging the corridors and the graves. And this means years of work, which means the prophets and the followers prepared the cemetery for themselves during their lifetime. Now, here we can see the chisel marks, the way it's cut. So, all cut by hand.
Yeah, manually.
Yes. Also, the Jewish tradition, when they bury someone or visit the cemetery, they wash the hands after to be cleaned. So there are 4 basins like this one for washing the hands. As a basin, this part is broken by time. The water comes through the hole like a spring. When this is full, the rest goes down by this clay pipe, which is like a drain for the water. Now, you start walking from there. Make the whole circle, then go into the room in the center there, Haggai, Malachi, then you will see a light there, that's Zechariah, and you come again from this side. Take photos, films, whatever you like.
As advised by Mr. Jamiel, we started the tour on the right-hand side, beginning at the tomb of Haggai and Malachi's followers. Ancient Egyptian beliefs in the afterlife focused on providing the deceased with treasures and items meant to ensure a comfortable life after death. They believed that these offerings would help the soul transition to the next world. In contrast, Jewish beliefs center on the idea of spiritual life after death, where the body is seen as a temporary vessel. Rather than material possessions, Jews traditionally place books, names, and prayers at tombs, ensuring that future generations know about the significance. Books, names, and prayers were left at the tombs. As a result, the site was known as the Tomb of the Three Prophets and recognized by the archaeological department. All the graves are 1 meter deep, 2 meters long, and carved to resemble a box. A ledge runs along the sides, and the body wrapped in a white shroud, is laid inside. Flat stones are placed on top to seal the grave, followed by leveling the ground with flooring. This practice continues today among both Jews and Muslims. Jews traditionally bury the body in a shroud, often without a coffin. The family of Mr. Jamiel has lived in the complex for 80 years, with his father passing down the responsibility of overseeing the cave to him. We will see the tomb of Haggai, which has been dug deeper, probably because people were looking for gold and treasures. We paid 40 shekels for all of us for the experience, which also covered the candles. It's more like a donation than a fee. On top of that, Mr. Jamiel accommodated us, patiently sharing information about the cave after visiting ours. Inscriptions indicate that the site was also used for the burial of Christians in the Byzantine period. Both Jews and Christians venerate the site as the tombs of these prophets. Haggai, Malachi, and Zechariah are the last books of the Old Testament. Regarding prophet Zechariah, there are two figures associated with Jerusalem. One is the Old Testament prophet during the time of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, buried here, and the other is Zechariah, a priest, the husband of Elizabeth, and the father of John the Baptist. We did see many papers inside the tombs. The tradition likely dates back centuries, though the exact time it began is unclear. It serves as a form of symbolic communication, showing respect or making a personal connection to the place or person buried there. This practice is common in many religious and spiritual traditions, as a way to connect spiritually or seek blessings. The tombs of the prophets are at the top of the Mount of Olives, right at the start of the path down from the Triumphal entry. Just above it is a popular viewing terrace of Old City Jerusalem. The cave has no ornaments or decorations. It's a simple plain cave, much like the lives of the prophets themselves. A life marked by humility and simplicity, focusing on their spiritual missions rather than material wealth or worldly adornments. The simplicity of the cave reflects their role in guiding others through faith and wisdom, rather than through grandeur or external displays. Toward the ceiling, there are 5 small tombs for children. It was truly fascinating to learn about the deep, multi-generational connection Mr. Jamiel's family has maintained with the site. The history and the sense of legacy they've passed down really left an impression on us. This is another wash basin that Mr. Jamiel mentioned earlier for cleansing after burying a body. And a closer look at the layout of the tombs of the last prophets. As we revisited these clips during editing, we found ourselves reflecting even more on the incredible dedication he showed, not just in his work, but in how he lived and breathed the essence of the place. The experience was so meaningful, and it's something we won't easily forget. We hope we get the chance to return someday and meet him again. There is a sense of warmth and purpose in what he do, something we'd love to show our appreciation for. Oftentimes, when we are caught up in the moment, it is easy to lose our sense of awareness. We are easily consumed by excitement, distractions, and so many other things that we can overlook the deeper significance of the moment or the person in front of us. It's in these moments that we may miss the bigger picture, the true essence of what's happening or who's involved. Taking a step back, when we can, helps us appreciate things more fully and understand the value of the experience and the people in it. The dedication of Mr. Jamiel is sketched in our hearts. After an exclusive tour of the tomb of the prophet, we walked the triumphal entry path once again to head back to the foot of the Mount of Olives. As the sunset paints the sky over Jerusalem in a breathtaking blend of colors, starting with fiery oranges and radiant golds near the horizon. Together, we explore, share laughter, and create lasting memories while walking the historic Mount of Olives. We made a stop at the cemetery and take in the view of Jerusalem from this perspective. This Jewish cemetery at the foot of the Mount of Olives is one of the oldest in the world, with over 3,000 years of history.
ba to?
a sacred site deeply woven into Jewish tradition and serves as the final resting place for countless rabbis, scholars, and community leaders. This burial ground is revered for its connection to the coming of the Messiah, as it is believed to be the first place of resurrection. Many seek to be laid to rest here for its spiritual significance. Walking through its ancient tombstones, one can see inscriptions in Hebrew, stories etched in stone, a sense of continuity between past and present. The cemetery also offers a breathtaking view of Jerusalem, connecting visitors to the land's enduring legacy and the faith of those who came before. From here, we will officially conclude our walking tour of the Mount of Olives, a site steeped in history, faith, and tradition that brought us meaningful encounters. Wrapping up our walking tour at the Mount of Olives, our day's journey is far from over. Coming up, we'll explore a place known as the Valley of Kings and Prophets. Re-enter the city wall to visit more revered site inside the Old City. Then watch the supermoon overlooking Jerusalem.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit bell button of Paul Tonet for more videos.